What is going on, everybody? It's Monday, and welcome to the NHL Stokastic Strategy Show. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm your host. I didn't even know we had a show until last night. We got the schedule out. I was looking. I was like, yeah, I think just Tuesday and Thursday. And it's like, why are we scheduled for Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I just have like a little an analog schedule that I just have beside me that I keep track of, and I looked ahead and I didn't have this date marked, and then thank God you said something to me last night, because otherwise I wouldn't have been researching the slate as much as I had this morning. So I appreciate that. I think this is our last Saturday or Monday show of the year.
Yeah, so we have three this week, two next week, and 3 the week after. But I think it's
and that's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, second to last Monday show.
I wasn't expecting. I looked at the schedule last night. I was like, thank God I looked last night because I had a lot to do this morning. But I got researched. We're going on. Make sure to smash. Oh, I see. I froze my phone. No, here I am. Am I frozen?
I can hear you now, but it was a struggle there for a good 30 seconds.
Did you refresh your router? I don't know. But yeah, here I am. We are sponsored by Bet365. We'll have you guys in a little bit wild 6-game slate today. Let me reset my internet again. I might drop off, but I will be back. Oh, there we go. What's up, fellas? What's up, ladies? Got my pink cup with a J on it. 6-game slate, lots of big totals. We have Florida with a big total. Why am I freezing? I'll be back.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna take off from here. Josh is gonna try to figure out his internet. We do have a big 6-game slate, as he said. As he also said,
hey,
make sure to click that like button, click the subscribe button. Those things all help us out. You can get into the Stokastic Hall of Fame as well. Stokastic Hall of Fame is where we celebrate our subscribers' success. And if you want to do that, these are the steps you have to take to get into the Stokastic Hall of Fame. You download the Stokastic avatar from stokastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with at least 5,000 contestants. If you're playing NHL, I think that's just the quarter arcade and the dime time. You tweet those wins to the Stokastic Hoff account. And if you do all that, you can win a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. You can only win 1 free month per year. I assume if you're placing in the top 5 of 5,000 plus contestants regularly, you probably are doing well enough without the Stokastic membership. So only once per year. But make sure to send in those screenshots to the Stokastic Hoff account over on Twitter. And real quick, again, just want to give a shout out to Bet365 for sponsoring our show here today. And I see Josh is back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet. It was completely fine right up until the show. Reset my routers, unplugged and replugged in my Ethernet. I don't know what's going on here. But 6-game slate. Let's get into it before I, fall off again. First game, Montreal Canadiens with a 3 total. Heading into low, the Sabres have a 3.9. Tage Thompson is a game-time decision. That would change things. I know Casey Middlestat was up with Tuck and Skinner at practice. Tage Thompson plays. This just adds another really, really good line to the slate with some Florida lines. Then we have Colorado and Edmonton late hammers with huge totals. Canadiens have a 3 total here. Raphael Harvey-Pinard coming off a 3-shot hat trick, which buried me on Saturday. But they're not getting too much ownership here. Eric Comrie's in net. Buffalo's not very good defensively. I like both sides here, but if you're choosing between expensive lines, like Buffalo 1, Florida 2, Edmonton's, and Colorado's, I'm not sure how high up the list you'd make the Sabres in one lineup, albeit it's a very, very good spot.
Yeah, I mean, so much just depends on Tage Thompson, right? Like that. It's not like we're waiting for news on some $3,700 winger. Tage Thompson is an $8,000 center, one of the most expensive players on the slate here tonight, and obviously with the season he's had thus far, very important to the slate. So it changes a lot what we might recommend or wouldn't, depending on whether it's Thompson or whether it's Middlestat. I mean, first of all, at least on DraftKings, Middlestat's a winger. So if he's in, that top line is 3 wingers on DraftKings, which that presents its own problems. The other thing is that Middlestat's $5,100 cheaper, which means if Middlestat is in and you do decide to go with that top line stack, I think it's like a $16,000 line roughly, as opposed to 21,000 plus with Thompson there. I mean, a night like tonight, that's the difference between, punting your defenseman and playing Cale Makar. It's a pretty big difference. So it's really hard to say what to do unless we know he's in. Like, if Thompson is in, it might be my favorite spot on the whole slate for a variety of reasons. One is that Montreal top line is not good defensively. I mean, they have been a little bit better in their very recent games. So, they're still below average, but they have been better. But, the recent stretch hasn't really been super tough. Like, they've been playing playoff teams, but, two games against Tampa. Tampa's not looked that good for like a month now. They did have that game in Boston, but then, Columbus, Florida's, a super high paced team. Pittsburgh hasn't been playing that well of late outside of maybe like 5 forwards. So hasn't really been a brutal stretch for them. But it would still make a really, really good matchup for the top line going up against Suzuki and company. Not only that, but Montreal's penalty kill is still really, really bad. Like, that's one thing that hasn't really gotten better this season. It's the penalty kill. And they do take way more penalties than the league average. Like, not like way, way more, like not Arizona levels, but, above average in that regard. So it is a tremendous power play spot for Buffalo as well. I do have some concerns. Obviously, if Tage Thompson doesn't play, that's one concern. The other would be is just how healthy he actually is if he does play, because ostensibly they're still in the playoff race, right? Like, I think at this point we're probably not counting them in, but a win tonight puts them only 4 points back of the final playoff spot. So, like, they're still kind of chasing. So I suspect as long as Thompson can skate is that he'll play. It's just how effective is he actually going to be if he does. And the other thing is Rasmus Dahlin. That's something that I brought up in our Discord earlier today. Like, Rasmus Dahlin, there has been hints that he's playing through some sort of injury, and you can kind of tell by the way he's playing as well. Like, he's not skating and turning as well. Not that he was like an elite defensive defenseman, but he's getting regularly turnstiled like every game, it appears. And the shot generation and scoring chance creation numbers have really taken a dive this month, like a big dive, like amongst the worst on the Buffalo blue line type of dive, which is not where he was through the first 50 plus games of the season. I think there might be some merit to him playing through some sort of injury here. So you have declining performance from Dahlin, at least in terms of shot generation and scoring chance creation. You have a questionable Tage Thompson, and even if he's in, how healthy is he actually? I think there are concerns with the Buffalo top line, and like, they're not playing super heavy minutes of late either, right? That's another concern. So, a lack of high-end minutes, Tage Thompson being questionable, Rasmus Dahlin's play declining, probably due to injury, I think. Would leave lots of reasons to not play Buffalo, but then the reasons to play them is really low ownership, right? Like, our projected ownership on that top line, if Tage plays, is 3%. It's a 6-game slate. Montreal is still one of the worst defensive teams in the entire league. If I can get that line at 3%, I think I might risk it, even if Thompson's at like 80%, and even if Dahlin's only at 85 or 90% or whatever. I think in this matchup, it's still worth it. If it was like an 11-game slate, I would say, well, maybe there are other spots. And there are still other spots. Colorado and Edmonton are on this slate, right? Like there are still others, Florida and Ottawa. Like there are still other spots to go to. But it is really a tremendous matchup, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play for that Buffalo top line. Like if Taja's in, I'm going to be pretty tempted to play them. The thing is like, if you're playing a lot of lineups, you have to have 2 sets of lineups. You have to have one set with Tage in and one set with Tage out, especially with Middlestat being a winger and that line being 3 wings on DK. So I would just make sure you have a backup plan if you are going with Buffalo 1. But there's, other than health, there's no concern for me matchup-wise from the Montreal side. The question is what to do with the Buffalo depth, right? Because if Tage plays, the second and third lines are probably going to be fairly similar to what they've been and not the exact same. Quinn, Cousins, and Peterka have been generating a lot of late. I was looking at their numbers since the trade deadline. It's been about 3.5 weeks. 4.4 expected goals for per 60 minutes, 3.9 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Problem is like if Thompson's in, none of them are going to be on the top power play unit, and you definitely want guys on the power play against Montreal. But with how relatively cheap they are, like they're under $12,000, they can get there without significant power play contributions in this particular matchup against Montreal. It's just they're coming in with pretty heavy ownership, right? Like I'll bring up our top stacks tool real quick. This is Buffalo 2. Under 2% top 2 stacks, 7.4% ownership. So there's negative leverage on them. In fact, amongst the most on the entire slate here tonight. So I get if you don't want to play an over-owned Buffalo, but it's still a tremendous spot for that Buffalo second line. It's just what to do with that Buffalo top line. I like it, you can't say exactly what without knowing whether Thompson's in or out. But I think given how short the slate is and how heavy the ownership could be on other spots, other high-end spots like Colorado and Edmonton, like I suspect there's going to be a lot more ownership on Colorado and Edmonton than Buffalo here tonight, even though Buffalo's in a great matchup. Just because of that ownership reason, I think it's enough to overcome my injury concerns that we might have if Thompson plays. On the Montreal side, frustrating game on Saturday. You and I were talking with other people about the slate and things like that and what players to play heading into that slate. We were on the Gurianov and Drouin line. Out of 8 goals, they put up 4.3 DraftKings points combined, 2 shots and 1 block between the 3 players on 8 goals.
They had such a good matchup too. They were going up against Roslovic and Kent Johnson.
I mean, any matchup against Columbus is a good matchup, but yeah, they didn't get there. But they are still, generating a fair bit of offense. I was looking, only 45 minutes with Drouin and Gurianov together without Josh Anderson, but 3.1 expected goals for, north of 3 goals, actual goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. Like they're still generating quite a bit. So I do like that Montreal second line, but it's the same problem as with the Buffalo second line, is that there's a lot of ownership coming in on them because they're so cheap. It's one of those lines that can fit in with an Edmonton power play stack or with a Colorado power play stack or something like that. So I do worry about a lot of ownership, but if you're going to play anything but Montreal's top line tonight, there's just going to be a higher than expected ownership just because of the other teams on this slate and the price that they are in this matchup. That's just, it is what it is. So you have to decide whether you want to play, the super cheap guys here or go look in other games, maybe like, the Islanders or Seattle, where they might come in a little bit lower owned. But I will say that line is still generating. They are. It's that simple. The top line is where things really get interesting. Because they are generating, but at about a league average rate, 2.5 expected goals for per 60 minutes. The difference has been shooting percentage, scoring 4.6 actual goals per 60 minutes. So a really high shooting percentage is something that, Nick Suzuki's lines typically have had for the last couple of years. He is good at setting up teammates on dangerous passes. They just don't generate a whole lot. And they're kind of in that no man's land range at 14,200 on DraftKings, where you can play, some sort of Florida stack if you're not playing Tkachuk for, roughly the same price. Like I said, there are Islander stacks you can fit in at that price. So I don't particularly mind the Montreal one matchup because, the Buffalo top line, as good as they are offensively, they trade chances. They really do. Like, there's a reason why they're allowing over 4 goals or over almost 4 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 over the last month. So there is reasons to play the Montreal top line, especially with how bad Buffalo's penalty kill is. And, Montreal's power play has looked better since Mike Matheson returned. So I do think there are reasons to play the Montreal top line. I just think there are other lines across the slate in that price range that I would rather play because they honestly do not generate a lot. It's not one of those things, sometimes there are games where Matt Tkachuk won't have like 4 points or whatever, but he'll post 2 assists in like 8 shots or something like that. And, the peripherals will get him to value. That's not something that will happen with this line. Harvey Pinard either scores, 2 goals or, has a goal and 2 assists, or he just doesn't do anything. Like, it's pretty much, it's not that binary, but it's pretty close. So
it's that binary.
Yeah. I just think with other similar lines that I like in that price range, there are just other spots I'd rather go.
Yeah, on Raphael Harvey-Pinard, like, for a hat trick, he had the minimum hat trick bonus on DraftKings. He didn't get a shot bonus. He got the points bonus because he got a hat trick, but he had 3 shots on goal. He was shooting 100%. Like, if 1 or 2 of those get stopped, he barely hits value because he's not exactly cheap. So, like, with DraftKings, I'm looking for shooters, and he's just not one. You know what I mean? Like, he might end up being a good player, but he has something like 15 shots in his last 11 games or something like that. So, like, he has to score when he shoots, which he might, but long term, I'm going to fade that output. And I feel bad because people asked me about him in Discord before that game. I said, no, I'm not playing him. I think you can leave him off the stack and bing, bong, hat trick. But, he's a long-term fade. You have to deal with the short-term results.
Yeah.
Florida Panthers with a 3.7 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.2 total. Sergei Bobrovsky is confirmed. Mads Sogard is probable. Kachukis are going to be facing each other today. Maybe they fight each other. Who knows? But Panthers going with, let's see if I got this right, Barkov, Duclair, and someone. I know the second line is Lundell in between for Hagee and Tkachuk. Who's up on the? Is it Luosterainen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And then, Senators running status quo here. I think Julien Gauthier might be out, but that doesn't really affect the top 6. I didn't see definitive news on Chychrun, but I think he's out as well.
Yeah, he might be done for the season. They said at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, so okay, so I don't know what it is, but like maybe it's just his line mates. I have not been a big fan of the Barkov line this year. I want to go to whatever line Tkachuk and Verhaeghe's on, and now they get Anton Lundell at center. So Bennett's out. I think Bennett's the ideal person to be that center. But you saw with E2 Luosterainen in between them that they still produced a lot. And E2 Luosterainen is a very defensive-minded center. Now, Anton Lundell is an offensive-minded player. He's had a very rough season, but if the point here is if Verhaeghe and Tkachuk bring E2 Luosterainen into the fold for DFS, like I have a hard time imagining that Anton Lundell is going to hurt them offensively. I think that line's going to be a little bit better with Lundell than Luosterainen, especially in this matchup. They're not getting a ton of ownership. There are tons of spots on this slate. Like I like both sides here because Florida is very high event. I think this is probably the most important game on both sides on the slate. I like the Florida second line. I like the Ottawa top line. It's just you're going to have to pick something. You're going to have to fade somebody if you're making 1 to 3 lineups. I'm making one lineup. And like between Colorado, Buffalo, Edmonton, Florida, and Ottawa, I'm having a tough time. So maybe Cliffy can guide me.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you that Barkov hasn't really been that great of late. What I will say, or this season, at least not to his standards, what I will say is that he does have 21 shots on goal in his last 5 games. Starting to come alive a little bit, which is nice to see. Shots had been a little bit of an issue for him. Anthony Duclair being next to Barkov, I think changes quite a bit because those two have a sample going back to last year playing pretty well together. Now, the thing is that they played a lot with Carter Verhaeghe, and obviously Barkov and Verhaeghe is a pretty dynamic duo. So I think it's fair to say that, maybe Barkov and Verhaeghe were doing a lot of the heavy lifting and Duclair was just kind of the beneficiary. But I was looking at the numbers without Verhaeghe, and they're really, really good. 165 minutes together for Duclair and Barkov without Verhaeghe over the last 2 seasons. 3.7 expected goals for per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. 4.8 actual goals, shooting under 11%. Like, they're beating the brakes off the opposition. And that's something like most of those minutes were last year, but it's relatively the same this year as well in just 60 minutes. 3.7 expected goals for, 3.8 actual goals for in 60 minutes together for Barkov and Duclair. So those two have been really good together going back to last season and in a small sample this year. If Duclair wasn't there, I would agree with you, and I would just go right back to Verhaeghe and Tkachuk, Florida 2, no questions asked. With Duclair on the top line, it kind of changes things because, him and Barkov do play pretty well together. Luosterainen's a nice player. Like, he's a guy that contribute. He's not somebody that needs to be carried. So I don't think it's necessarily that bad of a line. And going up, they'll match up quite a bit against the Ottawa top line. I don't think it really matters because I was looking at the Ottawa lines basically over the last month, and their defensive numbers are virtually identical. So I'm not that concerned about what the matchups are. But you're still getting only Barkov on the top power play unit, right? That's the concern here. And it's because Ottawa is one of the most penalized teams in the NHL, 3.6 times shorthanded per game. Only Arizona takes more penalties per game. And the penalty kill's typically not been that great. Now, it has been pretty good of late, I will say, but it's typically not been that great this season. And you only get Barkov on the top power play unit from the top line. So that would be the thing that would keep me away from Florida 1. It's not necessarily how they played. It's the fact that you only get one guy on the power play unit, and it's a really good power play matchup for them. So it's a long-winded way to say that I think I agree with you. I would go back to Florida 2 because you do get Tkachuk and Verhaeghe. Like, we've talked, I don't know, in a dozen shows this year about how good that line has been this season. Certainly not any different with Lundell there. Lundell and Tkachuk together, I was showing the charts in our Discord, but it's absurd. Like, they're in the entire offensive zone looks like a bloodbath when they're on the ice because they're just generating so many shots with Tkachuk and Lundell. So I do like I don't mind having Lundell there because I think there's some offensive juice and he's passable offensively in that sense. I don't think it's necessary to play him. If you want to just turn it into a power play stack and just go Barkov or Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, I think that's perfectly fine here. But I do think both top lines are in play. All things being equal, I would rather take the second line. You get 2 guys on the top power play unit, and there's a longer sample this season of Verhaeghe and Tkachuk playing that well together. But I think they're both very much in play. Question is what to do on the Ottawa side, because Ottawa moved Claude Giroux to the top power play unit last game. Now, whether that sticks remains to be seen because they have changed things up at times on the power play this season. There was a time where I think Stützle went to PP2 for a couple games. And I don't feel super confident that Giroux is going to stay on the top power play unit. But if he is, all of a sudden that line is perfectly correlated. And what we mentioned on the last show was that line's entire problem this year was shooting percentage at 5-on-5. And it's turned around in the month of March. Month of March, they're shooting 11.8% at 5-on-5, scoring over 4 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Brady Tkachuk has 30 shots in his last 5 games. He's averaging 6 shots a game. So, in that stretch, Tim Stutz was playing over 23 minutes a game. Claude Giroux's like 19, 20, 21 minutes a game, especially now that he's on the top power play unit. The problem is they're going up against that Florida top line. Florida top line with Luostarinen and Duclair there is probably going to be pretty good defensively. Obviously, Sergei Bobrovsky's nothing to be feared in net, though. And Florida, while not as penalized as Ottawa, isn't very far behind. They're like 5th in time shorthanded per game this season. Penalty kill has been getting a little bit better, but still not that great. So I really, really do like the Ottawa top line. If you want to drop down to the second line, I think it's fine. But they're coming in really over-owned. Batherson's off the top power play unit. It's a really good power play spot. I think I would just stack the top line. And they're not even that expensive at $20,200. And, with Colorado and Edmonton and, even Buffalo on the slate, low double digits might be the highest we see them. And that's pretty good for a 6-gamer. So I really, really do like Ottawa 1 in this matchup. So Ottawa 1, Florida 2, but really Florida power play for me out of this one.
Yeah. Ottawa second lines are really missing Josh Norris. Like that really affects for DeBrincat dropping from Josh Norris to Shane Pinto is a big drop off for Alex DeBrincat. So yeah, I agree. Ottawa 1 for me, Florida 2. You can go to Florida 1. You can go to Florida power play. Plenty of things to do there. Before we move on, we have a $10 super chat. I didn't forget about you, Provius. Said $10 donation to upgrade Josh's internet. Decent day yesterday on a few lineups. Thanks for everything you guys do. I'm on the edge of regular service and satellite service. I was streaming John Wick yesterday because you said you saw John Wick 4 in the theaters, which we're going to talk about next week. We're definitely going to carve out a nice little spot for that. But I'm rewatching the other 3 just to get ready for it. And my internet yesterday, like every 3 minutes, it was like calculating, getting the wheel of death going on the TV. So I have to have perfect weather conditions, 1 cloud, orange, red. My internet just blows.
It's like having a satellite dish in 1999 or something.
Yeah. 1 drop of rain, my internet will disconnect. But thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Wish my internet was better, but if I remember to reset my routers.
Shout out Provius. He had a really good week. Every night I was checking Discord or every morning I was checking Discord to see what happened the night before. And Provius is like, well, went 8x last night, or went 6x, or went 12x last night. Like, he had a pretty good week. So appreciate the $10 super chat. Let's hope we can finish strong here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I always have to scroll when I wake up because he works overnights. So that's a good time to sweat hockey. Be like, sorry, man, can't do my job. Sweating the late night Vancouver Canucks. I'm up.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm up watching the Vancouver Canucks just kill me. As we mentioned off the hop, if you heard me, if I wasn't disconnected, we are sponsored by Bet365. And the best way to take advantage of the books, get free money with their great promo offers. And we have a very, very good one for Bet365. Click the link below in the description to take advantage. It's the best offer we've ever had. Bet $1. Just $1. And get $365 in bonus bets. Obviously, you have to deposit that $1. And the bonus bets winnings are added to the bonus bets balance. Bonus bet wager excluded from returns. There's time limits and exclusions apply. But all you got to do, literally, is sign up, make a deposit, bet $1 on anything, and you will get $365 in bonus bets. I use Bet365 a lot. It is one of the books available in New Jersey. This deal is available in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. One thing I use Bet365 for, there's 2 main reasons. Because one, I use OddsShopper to shop for the best lines, and Bet365 has the best lines in these 2 things. NHL goal scorers, anytime goal scorers, they usually have the best lines, and MMA money lines, they usually have the best lines. So if you're into betting NHL or MMA or any sport really, sign up, get $365 in bonus bets, and we'll go on your way. Let's move on to the next one here. New Jersey Devils with a 3.1 total heading into Long Island. I've made my piece about going into Long Island. It is a miserable experience. They have a 2.9 total. Vitek Vanacek is probable. Ilya Sorokin is confirmed. 7,200 Ilya Sorokin, by the way, on DraftKings. Is it a trap? I don't know. But looks like Timo is going to be with Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt again, I saw the Amanda Stein. She was like, I don't know what the lines are going to be, but here's the lines. And then it was Hughes. I don't even know. We have the lineup builder.
It was Hischier, Meyer, Bratt, Hughes, Mercer.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So
okay. That being said, I don't really like stacking against Sorokin, especially when it's at home. But like the Islanders aren't very good defensively. It's just a matter of if Sorokin can bail them out. Now, Sorokin, one of the front runners for the Vezina, is probably going to be a top 3 finalist. But you're getting this Devils line around 1.5-2% here, just because they have the lower total of all these other teams. They're pretty expensive. They're fully correlated. The power play has not been great. But eventually it's going to come together, whether it's tonight or not. I think, if you're making 20 to 150, I think being overweight to the Devils top line is a good play. You don't need much to get over the field here. If you have like 4 or 5% New Jersey won here and hoping, you beat the, when they're not chalk and they have that big game and you're like, oh man, I missed it. I think, trying to get that big game at low ownership could be tonight. So especially in MME, I think you can get over the field pretty easily here and hope it's their big game. On the Islander side, there's just not much that I really like here. If you want to, go Nelson Palmieri, I think that's fine. But like, they're not exactly cheap. Like Palmieri's up to 4K, Nelson's 6K. Like if you're fitting in these big boys, like you're going to have to use, like a Pierre Engvall or drop down to like JG Pageau, but he's off the top power play. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know how much interest I have in the Islanders tonight.
Yeah, I don't really have a ton of interest in the Islanders. Certainly not the top line.
Yeah,
like we were cracking jokes in the Discord, but like Bo Horvat's been on a little bit of a skid of late. He's still generating is the thing. He has no goals in his last 11 games, but he has 39 shots in that span. So he's still putting up 3.5 shots per game. Like it's not as if he's just not generating anything. Like percentage crashes like that. Obviously there's some luck involved, but I also think there is passer quality that plays into it. I don't think it should, really shock anybody that if you have a better passer on your line, like say Matthew Barzal or, a Mitch Marner in Toronto, or if you're on a power play with say an Elias Pettersson or something like that in Vancouver, maybe you can shoot at a higher shooting percentage. If you're playing with Hudson Fasching and a 38-year-old Zach Parise, you might struggle to shoot 15 or 16%. So obviously Horvat's not going to shoot 0% for, forever and ever, but can he get back to the level he was in Vancouver until Barzal returns? I think that's a pretty fair question to ask. So, I mean, I'm not playing him with Parise and Fasching. I don't have any confidence that line's going to stay together for 60 minutes. I really don't. And, you only get one guy on the top power play unit. Horvat's been in a pretty brutal stretch. Like Fasching's a weird player because I was looking at some of his micro stats. Nothing really stands out, but his play driving stats are really good, which usually one leads to the other. Doesn't always, but usually maybe it's just a small sample playing with numbers. But it is worth noting that Fasching, a lot of his time came in the bottom 6 playing with JG Pageau. So how he plays on the top line with Bo Horvat, I think is an open question. There's no sample of that line. Obviously, Parise and Horvat haven't played much together. Like I said, Fasching and Parise played together, but it was in the bottom 6. It certainly wasn't in a top 6 role like this. So I don't think they're going to be very good. But by the same token, they're not going to be put into a heavy matchup, right?
Lee Nelson and Palmieri, the second line, went out, or not Lee Nelson and Palmieri, Engvall, Nelson and Palmieri, went out against the top line of Buffalo's on the weekend. So I suspect that'll be what happens again here today. So you're going to see that Brock Nelson line going out against Hischier and Timo Meier. That's pretty bad news for them. Hischier and Timo Meier haven't played a lot together since Timo got there, but in the minutes they have played, they're at 2.1 expected goals against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Unfortunately, they're getting 760 goaltending behind them. So, there's been some goals against. But they're dominating the play. 60% shot share when they're on the ice. Like, they're really dominating the play. So I don't feel too good about either side of that matchup, really. And, I don't feel good about Bo Horvat's line at all. So I think, if anything, on the Islanders side, it would be Nelson, Palmieri, and Engvall. Like I said, if anything, because they're going to get probably some heavy minutes. You're going to get a couple guys on the top power play unit. Nelson, Palmieri, they haven't looked bad with Engvall there. Pretty small sample, but 77 shot attempts per 60 minutes in nearly 60 minutes together. So they have been generating. Brock has 24 shots and 5 goals over his last 10 games. So he has been scoring as well, but you're really just banking on the New Jersey Devils goalies falling on their face is the problem. And I just hate relying on that. So if anything, it's a Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall line, but I don't think I have a ton of interest in the Islanders side. On the Devils side, don't really have a ton of interest either. That Engvall, I imagine that Engvall Palmieri line is going to be pretty good defensively in a bigger sample. They have been in a small sample. I imagine it's going to be the same in a bigger sample. We just saw them do work against the Buffalo top line on the weekend. Buffalo only scored 2 goals in that game, which is pretty shocking. That Buffalo only scored 2 but didn't allow any. So good for Buffalo. I don't know. We don't know that these are the New Jersey line combinations they're actually going to go with. And they went 11-7 in one of their games on the weekend, 11-4 at 7 defensemen. It's something that they could do again here tonight. I think that's something that Amanda, the beat writer, said. So that is a little bit of a problem. There's also the problem of Jesper Bratt being moved all around the lineup. Like, he's played on 3 different lines over the last 3 games. They're really trying to find the combinations that work, and they still haven't gotten there yet. I'm going to be out on Timo and Hischier. One, I think it's in single entry. If I was playing 50 lineups, that'd be a much different story. In single entry, I just think going up against that Engvall, Palmieri shutdown line, plus you're facing Sorokin, plus it's not a good power play matchup. They absolutely can get there, and there is good leverage on them. I wouldn't begrudge anybody for playing them in any kind of format. I just think, why play this line at 2% when you can go play Buffalo 1 at 3%? You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm out on New Jersey 1. The Hughes line is where I think things get interesting, because once you get past that Palmieri line, there aren't really matchups that I'm worried about on the Islanders side of things. Hughes and Andre Palat have been pretty good together this season. 3.4 expected goals for, 4.5 actual goals for. Dawson Mercer is the third man on that line. He's on the top power play unit now instead of Bratt. The problem is Mercer, after that severe hot streak, he's been on a little bit of a cold streak of late. He only has 5 points his last 10 games, under 2 shots per game in that stretch. But he is on the top power play unit. I think at the least a one-off Jack Hughes makes sense going against the pretty soft matchups that the Islanders are going to offer after that Engvall line. But if you want to do like a 2-man of like Hughes and Mercer to get some power play correlation, I think that's just fine. That's about the only thing that that is really appealing to me in like a single entry 3-max format.
Yeah. And with, Pierre Engvall, the Leafs really could use a bottom 6 player like Pierre Engvall.
I'm not going to get into that because I just don't want this to come blow up in my face if the Leafs actually do win the first round in a month.
Oh, so. I'll take it on the head if the Leafs win in the first round. I'll have some pom-poms going for playoff time. Anti-Leafs. I'll throw on a Kucherov jersey, which means I'm just taking my shirt off. Seattle Kraken with a 2.9 total. Heading into Minnesota, the Wild have a 3.1 total. Philip Grubauer, Marc-Andre Fleury are confirmed here. This is an interesting game.
Is it?
Interesting in the fact that it's not interesting. Like there's two pretty good defensive teams here, two pretty bad goalies. Like Marc-Andre Fleury's had a pretty nice season. He has not been the better goalie on this team. Wilder missing, obviously Kaprizov, so Marcus Foligno's up on that top line, who is basically a boat anchor wrapped in a road cone at this point. Marcus Johansson on that second line with Joe Eriksson and Boldy. Like Johansson's had a bunch of assists on that line, but like he really hasn't played that well. And like they're getting a Seattle team that have three pretty good lines. Just their goaltending's awful. So I don't know how much on the Minnesota Wild side I really like, because you see Boldy and Eriksson coming in almost double digits. They're not very cheap. They are on the top power play unit together. It's just, if you're looking to get in these really expensive spots, like you're not going to be able to fit Boldy and Eriksson. But if you're going to make a mid-range build without these top guns, one, it feels bad. Two, there's some obvious lines that you put in, right? Like, and this Joe Eriksson one feels like one of them. I think, if anything, I'm going to go to the Seattle side here. Side note, Eli Tolvanen scoring 2 goals against Nashville. That was just, I was hoping he was going to get the hat trick, but if anything here, like maybe go back to like a one-off Tolvanen. He's under 4K on the top power play, but like really from a single entry standpoint, I don't have much interest on either side. The more lineups you make, obviously you can get to more stuff here.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest on the Seattle side. There's a number of reasons for that. One is the ownership is a little bit high. I mean, it depends what line you're going to play. The only line that really has ownership concerns is that Bjorkstrand line, but it is that line that's cheap enough that can fit in with a Colorado stack or an Edmonton stack or something like that, right? So Bjorkstrand, Gordon, Tolvanen have been playing pretty well since the trade deadline, even if they haven't played a lot together, as Bjorkstrand's been moved around the lineup a little bit. But the problem is there's, as it has been with Seattle all season, is they're shooting 15%. If that's 10% instead, we're probably not even talking about them. So that's the problem, is that they're coming in over-owned and they're riding a pretty hot percentage right now. So, you know, Tolvanen and Bjorkstrand are both on the top power play unit. So that'd be one reason I'm playing, but it's a pretty bad power play spot. Minnesota's penalty kill's been on a slide, but it's typically not been bad this year. And, you know, they're pretty much league average in time shorthanded per game. So it's not like it's a really good power play spot for Seattle, which is a shame because that top unit is something we brought up last week. The top power play unit for Seattle has come alive over the last month, which is not something that they had through the first 4 months of the season. But it's not a tremendous power play spot for them. I was looking at, and, you know, they might get some shutdown matchups too. I was looking at the way Minnesota's been using their lines since Kaprizov got hurt. They're basically using, when they're at home, they're basically using their top 6 against the opponent's bottom 6, which means I don't know exactly how that's going to match up, but certainly they're going to avoid the McCann, Beniers, Eberle line, which has been pretty good defensively this month. I think they're going to avoid the Gord line as well, which has also been pretty good defensively this month. It could mean pretty good matchups for the Minnesota top 6. And Eriksson and Boldy have been better with Johansson. Like, I had to say, I was really skeptical about Marcus Johansson going. I have not been a big Marcus Johansson fan for a number of years now. And I was pretty skeptical that he was like, quote, their big splash at the trade deadline or whatever. But the line's been really good since he got there. They're over 120 minutes together now, by the way, which is a sizable sample. That's about 10 games worth, full games. 3.1 expected goals for, 4.1 actual goals for. They're playing 17 to 20 minutes, Johansson at the bottom end because he's not on the top power play unit. Boldy's started to shoot a lot more. He has 22 shots in his last 5 games. It's, the Seattle penalty kill has been fine, but it's typically not been very good this year. You want Kaprizov, obviously, for the power play. I don't think it's totally necessary. I don't mind that Boldy line. Like you said, they're probably going to end up in a lot of lineups that don't have like Colorado one or Edmonton one or something like that. But I wonder if Grubauer starting instead of Joey the Cord kind of scares people off. I guess we'll find out. But I don't mind that Eriksson Ek line with the way that they've been playing, and they should get good matchups against Seattle. I am definitely not in on that on that Harman Zuccarello Foligno line. The numbers without Kirill Kaprizov there, with Kaprizov there, shots go up 34% and goals go up nearly 40%. It's like without him there, I don't think they're playable. So I'm out on Minnesota 1. It's Minnesota 2 for me. On the Seattle side, I think it's just going to the McCann Beniers Everly line. But I'm going to be honest, I don't have any interest in Seattle here. Minnesota's been a pretty brutal matchup for road teams basically the entire season. Things haven't really gotten better over the last month or so. Seattle spreads out their scoring as it is, and it's not a good power play matchup. So I think if anything for me in this game, it's the Eriksson Ek line, maybe the Beniers Eberle line, just because they're not coming in with any ownership. Like they might come in under 1%. But other than that, I don't have a ton of interest in forwards in this game.
Yeah, me either. You excited for MLB to be back on Thursday?
You're right, I am.
I'm not sure how I feel about MLB DFS yet, but we can celebrate the return of MLB with 50% off your monthly Stokastic Platinum subscription. It's available for everyone, new and existing customers. Click the link in the description below to take advantage of this limited time deal. With this offer, you get access to everything Stokastic DFS has to offer, including projections, ownership, lineup generator, and the Boom Bust tool. It doesn't include Pick'em Pro or Bet Pro. Those are separate memberships. It's valid from March 24th to April 2nd. I will say I've taken the last few seasons off from MLB DFS, and it has helped a lot, but I do love MLB DFS. I think I want to probably play until my son is born in August, and then I'm just going to try to sleep as much as I can. But make sure to click that link in the description below and get that 50% off, especially with the size of the GPPs. Like it's pretty, like hockey is pretty similar to MLB from the sense that you got to pick two starting pitchers. It's like picking a goalie. You might as well just blindfold yourself and pin the tail on the donkey. And then, there's that stacking element. So it is very similar. So if you are into NHL DFS and have never played MLB DFS, you should give it a try. I'm probably going to play a bunch this year. I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to grind or what, but like the GPPs are just so attractive. Outside of NFL, MLB has the best, and they have really good structure. So make sure to check that out. Go Yankees. You're a Blue Jays fan, so we have that natural rivalry. We have we have original 6 teams in the NHL, and we have same division. And we've been pretty calm about it, though. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.9 total. Heading into Anaheim, the Ducks have a 2.7 total. Jonas Johansson, Juanito, John Gibson confirmed. Troy Terry away from the team to deal with a personal issue. Hope all is well there. This is a back-to-back for Colorado, but they ran McKinnon, Nishushkin, Rantanen on the top line with Comfort, Rodriguez, Newhook on the second line. The Dennis moved down to the third line with Lars Eller and Matt Nieto. I'm not sure you need to get down there. Not sure what the Ducks lines are going to be without Troy Terry, but I would imagine Max Jones, Ryan Strome, Trevor Zegras remain together. Or at least Strome and Zegras. After that, it could be whatever. I would, maybe with Terry out, Nikita Nesterenko moves up with Mason McTavish, but we don't know. But this isn't.
I think it's going to be Frank for Toronto, probably. Frank for Toronto comes back and just takes Terry's spot. I think that's what's going to happen.
That also makes some sense. This is an Avs 1 game for me, though. The Ducks are just brutal defensively. Troy Terry's their best offensive player. Doesn't matter what his defensive stats are. Everyone on the Ducks is bad defensively. If they get Strome Zegras, they're just going to run them over. Well, they should. This is a very good power play spot. It's just a question of, do you want to spend for Colorado? Do you want to spend for Florida? Do you want to spend for Ottawa? Do you want to spend for Buffalo? Do you want to spend for Edmonton? This is one of my favorite spots on the night. Colorado won.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we have to go into it too far. I mean, there's 3 weeks left in the season. I would think people know by now just how bad Anaheim is.
They almost have a 50-point projection tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They're at 49.3 points for the top line in Colorado. I'm pretty sure that's more than the entire Seattle top 6. So, like, yes, they're expecting quite a bit here. We don't have a big sample from that top line this season because, you know, they've been in and out of the lineup, except for Rantanen. You know, Nichushkin and McKinnon have been in and out of the lineup pretty much all season. 65 minutes together, 3.6 expected goals for per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, 3.5 actual goals for. Obviously, they're all playing pretty heavy minutes. Rantanen has 22 shots in his last 5 games. There's no matchup concerns on the Anaheim side. What I will say is what I mentioned in the Discord earlier today, and it's something that we brought up with Vancouver as well. Vancouver's defensive numbers, once they just yeeted Oliver Ekman-Larsson to the long-term injured reserve, got better. It's like, big surprise, when you take a big defensive liability off the ice, you're going to be better defensively. Anaheim traded John Klingberg to Minnesota, and since then, their defensive numbers have improved substantially. It's like their defensive numbers have improved like 17% in 3 weeks without John Klingberg in the lineup. It's incredible.
Well, he's awful defensively.
That's how bad he was defensively. And it makes me wonder, it's still not a big sample without Klingberg there. I think it's just 13 games they've played without him. So it's not really a lot, like enough to go off of. But it makes me wonder, like, is Anaheim the worst defensive team of the last 15 years as they were through game 60? Or is Anaheim just like a run-of-the-mill bad defensive team and we get 3 or 4 of those every single season? You know what I mean? Like, there's a pretty big difference between those two things. There's a big difference between this team is worse than the Buffalo Sabres of franchises from 10 years ago, and this team is, you know, like Columbus last year or something like that, right? Like, those aren't the same thing. And when you're talking about Colorado won in such an expensive line, I think it's important to talk about. By the same token, there are only 10 games left in the season, right? Like, we don't have a lot to really try to work this out. So I agree with you. Colorado won is definitely in a tremendous spot here tonight. Best positive leverage on the entire slate, and it's not really close. I think they're double what the Edmonton top line is, and it's because of the price, right? Like, they're 23,500 on DraftKings. I don't even think, like, I think you can get Cale Makar in too, but then you're just punting everywhere else. So I'm with you. Like, if I play anything from the Colorado side, it's the Colorado top line. I worry about ice time, first of all, because this is one of those games where, you know, Nathan McKinnon plays 17 minutes because it is Anaheim. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that I worry about. The other thing is, like, maybe Anaheim did get better defensively by trading away John Klingberg. Like, I think that's something that's very easily could have happened. So I'm going to be honest. Like, I have no problem playing Colorado here at all. And they're projecting extremely well. I'm just wondering if there's not lower owned, high end lines I'd rather play elsewhere, like the Buffalo top line we talked about earlier. That's all. I don't know what to do with the Anaheim side here because, you know, Strome and Zegras have terrible defensive numbers, but the offensive numbers aren't bad. Like, they're at least league average, which, you know, that being league average on this Anaheim team feels like a miracle. You know, Zegras is over 2.5 shots per game over his last 10 games, so he's shooting a little bit. I just worry about no Troy Terry. Like, I know he was on the second power play unit last game anyway, and they're broken up for a while, but he's easily their best offensive player. And you take the best offensive player away from a team that has 2 good offensive players. I don't know how good they're going to actually be. If anything, it's that Strome-Zegras line. But I think on the Anaheim side, I'm picking one off, so I'm not stacking anything.
Yeah, and here's the counter argument to McKinnon only playing 17 minutes. He very well may only play 17 minutes because it's 6-0. But the reason he may play more, Colorado very live to win the Central Division after being down and out for a while with the injuries. They're probably going to want to win that division. So I don't know. Like if it's a close game, you're going to see McKinnon play heavy minutes.
I was looking at his game logs a week ago. 19 minutes against Chicago, 19 minutes against Detroit, 17 minutes against Montreal, 15 minutes against San Jose. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a legitimate concern. He only plays 17 or 18 minutes tonight. And I don't think they need to be up 5-0 to do it either. That's kind of the problem here. Is like, yes, I would agree with you. Like, Boston certainly does that with Patrice Bergeron, which is something that, you and I talk about quite a bit. The Chicago game was a blowout. So was the San Jose game, but Montreal game really wasn't like a huge blowout. Detroit game wasn't a huge blowout, like they won. But anyways, I know what you mean. I just think there are ways, that this ends up a 3-1 Colorado game and McKinnon still only plays 17 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just trying to play devil's advocate for a second. Then I got
good movie, by
in the face by facts. Hate when that happens. Edmonton Oilers with a 4.3 total heading into Arizona. The Coyotes have a 2.6 total. Jack Campbell, Karel Vejmelka confirmed. Both top 6 lines for the Oilers have over a 40-point projection. And Kailer Yamamoto is on the top line.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
It's Matthias. That just came out while we were on the show. It's Matthias.
I see that now.
Top line
ownership. He's even cheaper than Kailer Yamamoto. Not that you have to play him there. Arizona takes a boatload of penalties. I think they're still the most penalized team, or the second most penalized team in the NHL. It's just a question between them and the Senators, I think. Second line of Draisaitl, Hyman, Nugent, Hopkins, fully correlated on the power play. That being said, do you really want a power play full stack of line without McDavid? I think you can add McDavid in there. That will really price hamper your lineup, but so would going Colorado 1 and Makar. Again, I'm just going to focus on, Kane, McDavid, and then the second line. I think you can mix and match. You can do some stuff there. On the Coyote side, that top line has been very good this season. Jack Campbell in net hasn't been very good this season. Now, the Oilers, outside of the Ekholm pairing, I think it's a little funky. I like the Coyotes top line here. I know they're getting about 14% here, but they're way cheaper. They're 11.5, like 15 and change. They have a pretty good projection here. Now, if you want to get even cheaper, if you're looking to get in like Colorado power play, I think going Jack McBain, Matthias Maselli is fine here. They're coming in over owned, but it's only like 5-6%. I think there's stuff to like on both sides here.
So I was going to be all gung-ho to fade the Yotes here tonight, thinking that they would probably come in too highly owned, and they don't have a high total. It's only a 2.6 total. It hasn't been confirmed, but it looks like Jack Campbell's starting and not Stuart Skinner.
Oh, he's confirmed.
Oh, is it confirmed now? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what kind of changed my mind is, Jack Campbell's terrible. Like, I'm sorry, but for an NHL goalie, he's for 15 months now, he's been arguably the worst goalie in the league. He has an 880 save percentage or something like that this season. It's not a perfect, not a good, even a good measure, but it speaks to how, kind of how he's been playing. That changes things. What else changes things is Arizona had been using the second and third lines a little bit in a shutdown role, which means they'll probably go out against Edmonton 1. And McDavid and Janmark with Evander Kane would probably be a good defensive line, if not at least average. That's not the case for the second line. Draisaitl, RNH, and Hyman are getting ran over defensively. I don't think people would expect that, but in roughly nearly 100 minutes together, 3.9 expected goals against for that Edmonton second line, 3.9 actual goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're getting torched. Now, they are generating a lot, so they're just basically trading scoring chances, but I think that's something that plays pretty well for that Arizona top line, presuming that they get pretty soft matchups and don't play a ton against Connor McDavid. Any top line's going to end up playing a fair bit against McDavid because McDavid plays like 78 minutes a night. But they're going to get some pretty good matchups against Edmonton too. So like, I'm kind of on board with you. Like, I don't necessarily want to play Arizona 1 at like 15% ownership, but I think it's a pretty good matchup at 5-on-5. Edmonton does take a lot of penalties. Not like they're not Arizona level, but they're not super far behind. And the Edmonton penalty kill is not good. And one thing we were talking about in our Discord earlier was the Arizona forwards are taking a lot more of the shots on the power play now that Jacob Chychrun and Shane Gostisbehere aren't there. So it does give them some more upside as well. I'm with you. I really do like Arizona 1. I think Arizona 2 is perfectly fine to play as well. I just think they're coming in with way too much ownership. That's all. They're coming in at like 10x their top 2 percentage. So it's just the ownership. So it's Arizona 1 for me. On the Edmonton side, I'm not stacking the even strength lines. It's the power play. I wouldn't say you have to, but Arizona, you said you thought they were one of. They are the most penalized team in the NHL. 3.8 times shorthanded per game, and the penalty kill's bad, like just flat out bad. It is one of the best spots Edmonton's going to can possibly get for their power play, and Edmonton's power play is one of the best that we've seen in modern NHL history. So I would focus on the power play guys, and it's really expensive to stack because of McDavid. So if you want to leave him off, I get it, but I would probably still do like, a McDavid, RNH, Bouchard, McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard, something like that. Especially with Evan Bouchard being $3,500 on DraftKings, there's just so much you can do with the Edmonton power play, even with a 10K Connor McDavid. Segue then for our next section, because Evan Bouchard is $3,500. What do you think his ownership's going to be? Because I think our projections are like 35 or 36%. I think he could be like 50% in some contests.
Yeah, if you're getting into 3 max and single entry contests, he's going to be 40 plus, I would imagine. Yeah, I agree with you with the power play in Edmonton. Sorry about the noise. Little guy starting an art class, but I'll mute my mic as soon as I'm done talking. Coming up after us, we have the Odd Shop at 4 p.m. with Eitan and Eric. That is former ISU caddy Eric Lindquist. Let's talk about these defensemen. That's a good segue with Evan Bouchard. Who else you like?
Yeah, Evan Bouchard amongst the cheap guys. There are a lot of cheap guys I actually like tonight. Our boy, the Zoob. Obviously, if Chychrun's not in, Zoob on the top pair with Thomas Chabot could play 20 minutes in a high event matchup for under 3K on DraftKings. I like the Zoob. Justin Barron from Montreal, as long as he's in the lineup, we'll see what their lineup looks like. Simon Benoit for Anaheim, he's pretty cheap as well. Don't mind him. If you want to get a bit more expensive, Patrick Nemeth plays a lot of PK minutes for Arizona, and they're facing the Edmonton PK. He's probably going to have to block a lot of shots here tonight. Owen Power and Eric Johnson as well, if you want to pay up a little bit more. The mid-price guys, there are 2 guys I'm focusing on. One is Jake Sanderson, running power play 1 for Ottawa. Obviously, he's more expensive now, and he doesn't shoot a lot, but he does block a lot of shots. So at least there are peripherals that he can offer besides just putting up points. And Gustav Forsling for Florida, he's just straight up playing more than Eric Ekblad per game now. Now that Eric Ekblad's off the top power play unit, Forsling's getting more ice time, and I think he's the better offensive player. So Sanderson and Forsling are 2 guys I really like here tonight. Other guys in that mid-price range, Valimaki, Ekholm, Mike Matheson from Montreal. For expensive, I think the only 2 guys I like are Makar and Montour. If I had to pick one or the other, I would probably go to Montour, but I think both are definitely in play here tonight. But I think given the the wide range of super cheap options here tonight, I don't know if I'm going to be spending more than 5K on any single defenseman.
Yeah, I agree. Unless I'm spending up for Makar or even Montour, I'm spending down on defenseman tonight. I think a lot of people are going to do that, so I think actually spending up for Makar could be a nice way to get a little bit different tonight.
That's why I think I'm going to try to find a way to get at least like one of Sanderson or Forsling. Like, they're not super expensive, but at least they're in that mid-price range where people playing Edmonton 1 or Colorado 1 probably won't play them.
Yep. Lots of cheap home goalies here. Who are you liking?
None of them. I mean, Sorokin, obviously. Sorokin's the top of the list, right? I think he's 7,200 on DK at home. Like, I'm going to play him all the time at that price. I want to take a chance on Vejmelka, The problem is like it's such a good power play spot. Like I feel like Edmonton could actually be efficient with their shots tonight, and that's a big concern. So I'm not super high on Vejmelka. I'd probably rather play John Gibson at 6,900 here tonight. I don't mind John Gibson tonight either. So it's basically between Gibson and Sorokin for me. But if I were to play like another super cheap guy, I would kind of have interest in Jake Allen. If Tage is playing hurt and Dahlin's playing hurt, maybe they can't create a lot of good quality chances. So I think this is another night where I'm going to be going pretty cheap in net. So it's out for me. It's Allen, Sorokin, and Gibson. Those are the three guys I'm kind of deciding between.
I do like Allen. Would you consider stacking some Avalanche against Gibson? Because there is a case to be made that John Gibson's one of the stackable goalies.
I would for sure. I don't know if I'd put like all Colorado 1 against Gibson or something like that, but I would play like a Makar against Gibson or a one-off McKinnon against Gibson. I would do that for sure.
Yeah, Gibson's one of those guys where he can have 41 saves, give up 5 goals, and still not kill you, and have some Colorado guys in there. It's not like you have to like thread the needle and get the one guy who's going to score. Like he's going to give up goals, but he could also easily get the saves bonus.
Right.
Who you looking for your hat trick pick? There's a lot of high firepower on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of high-end guys. I don't want to be super fancy, so I'm just going to go with the game that we just talked about, and I'm going to go with a guy that's just been on an absolutely absurd scoring bender for basically 2 months now, and I'm going to go with Clayton Keller.
Nice. I'm going to go with one that I think you're going to like. I'm going Claude Giroux.
Ooh, I do like that. I like Ottawa here tonight.
Yeah, me too.
You like Ottawa every night.
I just Ottawa and then figure out the rest. But we'll be back tomorrow, back to back, Cliffy and Josh. I'm going to attempt to go bald in between shows. Not sure how that's going to go, but we'll see you tomorrow. Make sure to click the links in the description. Click that like button on the way out. We'll see you in Discord. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.